That he looked very, very old. He looked like Methuselah old. I mean, he looked old. He was ugly. He couldn't get any velocity on any of his passes. He didn't seem all that mobile. You could tell his intelligence is still there. That's the trademark of Peyton Manning, that he's one step ahead of the defense. But he was mentally one step ahead of the defense while he was physically one step behind it. And that game against the Ravens looked really bad. The Ravens probably should have won that game just on a pure physicality standpoint. They looked better defensively. Their offense didn't seem to be clicking. Their quarterback, Joe Flacco, had some words to say about that. So we'll talk about that a little bit too. But Peyton Manning looked finished. And it made me think about the knee-jerk reactions that we often have to games and situations. We are so desperate and so hungry for there to be football back that even though week 1 is just a single game, we try and extrapolate an entire season's worth of information from that game, which is, apart from being completely nonsensical, worthless. Like, none of the information that we gain from just watching a single game, it hardly ever translates into usable data, as opposed to, the people that were saying that Peyton Manning, he didn't look good in the last 10 games that he played, including last week. Well, there you have a little bit of usable data. Now you're looking into a trend. I'm okay with that. If you looked at Peyton Manning and then you looked at Peyton Manning going all the way back into last season and said, look, he's looking progressively worse, I understand that. That for the first half of last season, he looked like an MVP. For the second half of last season, he looked like Joe Schmo. But last night, Peyton Manning did not look like Joe Schmo. And I am also trying to avoid the knee-jerk reaction that we are all capable of. Knee-jerking happens to everyone in every situation. That your first instinct when faced with extreme scenarios or something that you want to gain information from, despite the fact that you have no sample size, you read into it. You look far into it, too far into it. That I live with my brother, and sometimes that dude can get on my nerves. I mean, really, really get on my nerves. Then he's been on the show before. He'll come back on the show to talk about basketball. We argue a lot. Some people would call it hilarious. I call it labor. It's hard. Okay, it is hard work to live with that guy. But I can't knee-jerk react to things that he does. Okay. Every action that he does, I have to compare with my entire time living with him. That if I leave some food in the refrigerator, and this frequently happens, okay, and he eats it, and I go back for my food and I'm mad, my first reaction is to just blow my stack and ask him, why are you eating my food? Why have you gone into the refrigerator again with food that you have clearly not obtained? There's only 2 of us in this house, and you are eating my food again. And he's like, well, I'm sorry. Like, there's almost never a good reason for it. But he has been better about it lately. So I need to look at the trend of whether or not he has been consistently taking my stuff before I go off the handle about him taking my stuff. You look at trends. You don't operate off of a small sample size. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to maintain relationships with literally anyone. Okay, you can't spank your kid for having bad grades. If it's a one-time occurrence, you try and fix it. How are they getting bad grades? Are they not studying? Do they not understand the information? Is the teacher not good? You go through all the information first before you decide well, maybe the kid's not trying. But if your kid has a history of not trying, then that's different. We have to avoid these knee-jerk reactions to things. And we do it every single season. And it doesn't matter if it's high school football, college football, the NFL. Week 1 rolls around and we knee-jerk. We just go, oh, that happened. Peyton looked really bad. He must be finished. His career's over. He should just retire. Based on the one game of information that we have, which is silly. I think the Broncos could go all the way to the AFC Championship game. They're that level of good, and they're going to be relying on their defense. And I don't think anybody has any doubts about that. The Broncos are a defensive team now. But Peyton Manning did throw 3 touchdowns yesterday. So he helped generate 21 points. Part of it is field position that he got from that incredible defense. They had an interception and gave him a short field to work with. That's obviously going to play a part into it. It is a team sport after all. But let's be fair here. What we learned from week 1 and what we learned from week 2, 2 weeks of football is still not a big sample size. What tends to happen is we will go and week 1 will show us something that we learned, and X thing is a very, very important thing. The thing that we apparently learned last week is that Peyton Manning looks really, really old, and we're not sure how much football he's got left in the tank. The other thing that we are liable to really learn in week 2, though, is, Peyton Manning doesn't look that bad. Still doesn't have all the velocity on his passes that you'd like to see, but he's throwing with anticipation. He's throwing before his receivers are there. So it really doesn't matter in a lot of ways. The same reason that people have slow releases and you're still able to play in the NFL. If you throw with anticipation, if you throw before your receiver breaks on his route, you're usually fine. And that just comes with understanding the game, which very few people understand the game better than Peyton Manning. So the Chiefs have a really pretty solid defense themselves, and they weren't able to really slow Peyton down. But it would be unwise to knee-jerk in the other direction and go, never mind, Peyton's back. What we're probably going to see all season, and what is more reasonable to suggest, is that we're going to have an up and down kind of season regarding Peyton Manning. He's going to have some really good games. He's going to have some really bad games. He's probably going to have some games in between. He's never going to be Alex Smith. Alex Smith is going to be your game manager. He's not going to throw a ton of touchdowns. He's not going to throw a ton of interceptions. He's going to give you, 190, almost 200 yards and maybe a touchdown, possibly an interception also. And that's fine. For what the Chiefs need him to do, that's fine. But Peyton's going to take chances. He's a passer. He's got that mentality. He's aggressive. He goes for it. And so some games you're going to see touchdowns. Some games you're going to see interceptions. A lot of them. Peyton was responsible for one. And the Broncos were able to win this game with their defense. Despite the fact that Peyton threw 3 touchdown passes, it was ultimately the defense and cornerback Brandon Marshall punching the ball out of Chiefs running back Jamal Charles' hands, causing a fumble that was returned for a touchdown. The Broncos scored 2 touchdowns in 9 seconds. Peyton passed one to Emmanuel Sanders to tie the game, and then the Broncos recover the fumble with 9 seconds left to go to ultimately score and put the game on ice. That was the ball game. Left Arrowhead Stadium completely stunned. Okay, I think that was a huge win for the Broncos to go up 2-0 in that division. And the defense is what did it. And the defense is going to be what carries this team at points during this season. And I'm okay with that. The only issue with that is honestly, they have so many offensive weapons that how many how many risks will they be willing to take on offense because they feel like their defense will clean up for them? And can they? And should they? Because they are a talented bunch. Wade Phillips is now the defensive coordinator over there. And Wade Phillips is just brilliant. He's just brilliant. When he was with the Houston Texans, he was absolutely brilliant as their defensive coordinator. Before they let him go, they did have a bad season, but a lot of that had to do with personnel and the fact that they just didn't have the talent there. Now he's brought that to the Broncos, who do not need to lean on Peyton Manning like they did when he first arrived. When he first showed up there, they needed huge Peyton games. And fortunately for them, they got it. Very, very often, the reverse is true. Very, very often. And throughout Peyton's career, both with the Colts and with the Broncos now, you've had to have monster Peyton games because these defenses weren't built to give them the ball back and generate points. And the Broncos still can't run the football. The Broncos still cannot run the football. I'm looking at Ronnie Hillman's numbers last night. This is a passing team. So when there are games that Peyton's looked amazing, they're going to be fine because the defense is going to step up and Peyton's going to get them points. When they're not passing well, that offense is going to look abysmal like it did last week in week 1 against the Ravens. It looked terribad. Just awful. And part of it is no one's afraid of the Broncos running the ball. So you don't need a strong pass rush. You don't need a crazy pass rush to try and get to the Broncos or any kind of pressure, because you're not afraid of their ability to run at all. So you've got to force Peyton to throw. And once you know he's going to throw, even the trickiest quarterback of all time can't deceive you once you know he's going to pass the ball. And the Ravens took full advantage of that, made that game hideous and ugly. Defense won it again for the Broncos. And defensive battles are fun to watch. I know that a lot of people don't think so, but defensive battles are fun to watch, especially in the NFL. In defense, typically your job is to stop the other team from scoring. In defense and football, it's great because your job is to stop the other team from scoring, but also score if you can. So these defenses were scoring last night. Broncos win 31-24, and part of it is that their defense put points on the board, especially to put the game on ice. This is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Clutch with Keon Rose. I'm Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me today. We've got a lot to talk about, and we'll get there. We'll be talking about some of the games coming up this weekend, especially in college football and more. Right here, coming up next on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
Compass Media Network's coverage of the NFL. Hi, this is Jerry Recco. Join Kevin Ray, Danny White, and myself for all the action.
Hot News Talk 1240.
If it's the NFL, it's right here.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Hot News Talk 1240.
That smells so good. Smells like a big Italian dinner. But you're going to walk out with two. Buy one hot pizza, get a one for free. 2 pizzas. You got the 2 for the price of 1 at Raphael's Italian Restaurant and Pizzeria. My favorite Italian restaurant of all the time. Now, I'm living in Hickson. I go to Raphael's right down the street in Hickson Pike, right near Highland Plaza. You're in Saudi Daisy? Raphael's Italian Restaurant and Pizzeria in Saudi Daisy. Just next to Saudi Daisy Church of God. Hey, you're on Signal Mountain. There's a Raphael's Italian Restaurant and a Pizzeria. It's right on the main drag. You're going to love the pasta, the pizza. Buy one hot pizza, get a one for free. 2 pizzas. You got the 2 for the price of 1 at Raphael's Italian Restaurant and Pizzeria. Tastes so good. Bring the whole family. Come on, Raphael's Italian Restaurant and Pizzeria. Mangia. Salute.
Tired of insurance companies? Tired of doctors that won't spend time with you? Do something different. Leave the sick care model of medicine and come to Dr. Danielle Mitchell, the Chattanooga Sports Institute and Center for Health, where we're interested in long-term health solutions, not the quick fixes. Come see me, Dr. Danielle Mitchell, at the Chattanooga Sports Institute and Center for Health. I'm all about the long-term healthcare solutions and doing what's best. On the web, you can find me at ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. That's ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. Or call us at 875-1005, 875-1005, or find us on social media, Facebook, Dr. Danielle Mitchell, or the ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. Let's go, ya!
Are you tired of working in corporate America, or have you recently lost your job and would like to consider owning your own business? If you are, please call me, as I can help you look at franchises or business opportunities that fit you, the economy that we're in, and the type of businesses that are right in the greater Chattanooga area. After I help my clients find the right opportunity, I also help them find the best way to finance the business, including paying yourself through the startup phase. If you would like to learn more about opportunities that may be right for you, please call me for a free assessment. My name is Bruce Krebs at the Entrepreneur Source. Phone number is 423-875-5621.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Costa, host of the Costa Report every Sunday at 9 a.m. My guest this week is former Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Central Command, General Anthony Zinni, who'll be here to explain what it will take to stop the ISIS momentum. Don't miss General Anthony Zinni this Sunday at 9 a.m. on the Costa Report, right here on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Fox News Talk 1240.
Hello, everybody. This is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. I'm Keon Rose. You're listening to Clutch with Keon Rose. And college football tomorrow. We've got some incredible games coming up, or at least some highly anticipated games. I don't know how some of these are going to turn out, but I do believe that we've got some matchups here that look quite promising, especially inside the SEC. We've got some Southeastern Conference violence coming up here this weekend. I think we should start with Auburn and LSU. Start with Auburn and LSU because I don't know what the heck happened to Auburn. I have no clue. They played Jacksonville State last week, and they beat them, which everyone expected. But they had to go into double overtime, and they only beat them by 1 touchdown, which nobody expected. And I don't know why. They're still ranked 18th in the nation because, you know, close games do happen, even to great teams. But are we calling Auburn a great team? They better not get skunked by LSU this weekend, or they'll be out of the top 25 real quick. It's gonna that's one of those games. That's not there's a lot on the line already. Let's put it that way. And then especially when it comes to the SEC, because you've got all of these national title hopes. You want to have a clean record. You want to have the perfect season. You don't want to lose any games because you don't want to give the college football committee any reason to shut you out. You don't want to give them anything so that they can say, well, you don't belong in the playoff this year. The only issue with that, of course, is that they come up with plenty of reasons. And if you're in the SEC, you're in a tough division of football and you beat each other up. So you're gonna have maybe a loss, especially if you're in the SEC West. You will suffer. It's going to happen. Alabama and Ole Miss play, and Alabama's ranked number 2 in the nation behind seeming juggernaut right now, Ohio State, and Ole Miss is ranked 15th this is probably look, Ole Miss could challenge Alabama. Make it real hard for them to come off the ball like they would. I don't think that they're going to be able to push Ole Miss around like they did Wisconsin in the first week. Ole Miss is certainly tougher than that. But look, that game's not a gimme for Alabama. I think they win it, but that's not a gimme either. And then leaving the SEC, we've got another great game: Georgia Tech versus Notre Dame. Notre Dame on a roll right now, except they lost their quarterback last game. That one's going to be a tough one. Georgia Tech is looking to climb the ladder. They're ranked 14th in the nation. Georgia Tech is surprising everyone, has been surprising everyone since last season when nobody expected them to do anything, and then surprisingly, they won a bunch of football games. I didn't see that coming, and they're still winning. So I imagine that's not the fluke here, that this is Georgia Tech. They have the nation's top-ranked rushing and second leading scoring offense. I mean, they put points on the board. And they've scored roughly 60 to 67 points a game so far. I don't think that that's going to happen against Notre Dame. Notre Dame's a very good defensive team, and they held the Texas Longhorns to 3 points. Not that that's saying much, but at the same time, that's a big conference school that couldn't score any points on you at all. They couldn't get into the end zone even a little bit. With Georgia Tech, I don't think Georgia Tech's going to hang 67 on them. But at the same time, you can score on Notre Dame. It's not impossible. And Georgia Tech has the offense that's built to do it. They push everything. Like, their tempo is incredibly quickly. And that you've got a situation with the Fighting Irish. Again, the quarterback, they had a quarterback change due to injury, and it's just going to be interesting. Is Notre Dame going to be able to hang on to their 8th spot? Georgia Tech start to climb the ladder here and bring a lot of respectability and recognition back to a school that was once really, really, really good at football. So those are some of the big matchups in college football this weekend. You also have Stanford playing USC. Stanford was ranked, and then they lost to Northwestern, got waxed. And then USC is their rival. Stanford is a team that they've been historically bad, and then suddenly they were historically good. Then they got really bad to the point where they reached historic levels there. Then they got good again once Andrew Luck showed up, and they continued to play well after Andrew Luck graduated, went to the NFL. And what do you know? They're looking like they might be headed back in that bad direction. Really hope that wasn't the case, but we'll see. Stanford usually plays USC tough, but USC has been good this season. Steve Sarkisian staying out of trouble. I mean, as long as those things happen, and Cody Kessler, their quarterback, he's incredible. He's amazing. It might be the best quarterback in college football. In my opinion, I still think that's Boykin, but Kessler's right there, if not past him. There's a discussion to be had there. You could make that argument, and I wouldn't fight you too hard. That's how good Kessler's been. You could make that argument. I'm not going to fight you on that one. But it's been a while since we've seen USC look dominant, and they're starting to look like they could be back to their winning ways. Also, we have UCLA and BYU this weekend. Freshman quarterbacks dueling one another. And BYU is they're a team that they always threaten to make that leap, right? Like, they threaten to be in a top 10 kind of conversation every year. They always start around ranked 20th, 21st. They're ranked 19th this season. And you're looking for them to make the leap, to make that big statement victory that will get them into the top 15 discussion at least. And they fall apart against some team that they shouldn't fall apart against. And this season, they haven't done that yet. They have lost their starting quarterback due to a foot injury, and he's been injury prone his entire time there, Taysom Hill. But now you're looking at a game against UCLA. The statement victory is here for the taking. UCLA ranked 10th in the nation. Jim Mora Jr. is the head coach. Look, you've got a lot going for you here if you're BYU. Strike while the iron is hot. Try and win this football game. You don't want to fall behind against some of these teams, especially UCLA. They can really score, put up points on the board. You've got to come out and basically dominate from the beginning. And BYU is a solid defensive team. If they are able to do that, they'll keep their lead. I believe they'll keep that lead. So it's we've got a lot to go on there. A lot of rankings. And I think about rankings a lot. I'm sure you do too. It's a staple of sports. And one of the rankings that I have concerned myself with this week, and it's made quite a buzz, but it happens every year. Forbes will release a list of franchises, sports franchises. But of course, it's Forbes, so their list is monetary in nature. They release the top 50 most valuable sports franchises in the world, and it's cool to always see the list. Teams shuffle around. The teams at the top tend to more or less be at the top. You know them already. The Yankees, the Cowboys, Real Madrid for soccer. Real Madrid stays the most valuable team in sports. $3.26 billion. And I think it's important to talk about this. And every year that it does come out, I do read it, because we don't think often enough about how much money this stuff generates. I don't think when you say that the NFL is a $1 billion industry, the NFL as a whole is a $1 billion industry. A lot of these teams, most of these teams by themselves are worth billions of dollars. Number 2 on Forbes' list, the Dallas Cowboys, worth $3.2 billion. They're the most valuable sports team in America. Number 2, the New York Yankees. Surprise, surprise. Number 2 in the nation is the New York Yankees. Number 3 in the world, but also worth $3.2 billion. They're actually tied for number 2 with the Cowboys, and they're owned by the Steinbrenner family, and they have a lot of following and a lot of fans. I think the issue with some of these teams in the top 50 of the most valuable sports franchises, you've got the European Soccer League teams, right? You've got Manchester United is 5, Barcelona's 4, so they're in the Spanish league, and then you've got Real Madrid, also in the Spanish league, and those teams are good. They're still winning. There's no salary cap in soccer, nor in baseball. Spend as much money as you need to get the people that you want. That's fine. And soccer seems to be, at least at the moment, less analytically driven than baseball. So you're not as likely to build a team out of spare parts as you could in baseball. You could build a winning team based purely on the numbers. With a lot of the American teams, though, our leagues tend to be capped. You can only spend so much money for your whole roster before the league starts to penalize you. This is to give teams that don't have as much money a competitive advantage when chasing for free agents. That you're the Lakers and you have more money than the Milwaukee Bucks. You don't get the opportunity to just buy a guy, because you have to also worry about, well, how much is that penalty worth, and how much money do I have left to put towards my roster? So it's an exercise in budgeting, basically. Most American sports are one giant exercise in budgeting. And the teams that have been at the top of this list, the Yankees have been good this season, but they haven't been good lately. The Los Angeles Lakers are number 6 on this list, worth $2.6 billion. They are dreadful. The Patriots are number 6 on the list. Behind them, number 8, the New York Knicks, also dreadful, $2.5 billion of terrible, terrible basketball. The Dodgers are number 9, and tied with them, the $2.4 billion Washington Redskins, who are also not good. But this ought to tell you something about building a brand. Building a brand is important because a lot of times your reputation will carry you further than you deserve to be carried. How do you build a reputation? Two-part answer. First part of building a reputation is your first encounter. You have a successful first encounter. A lot of people remember you based on first impressions. You have a good first impression, and people will tend to remember you. If you have something memorable that you've done the first time someone remembers you, that's going to be you. I have a friend he's an amazing storyteller. I don't know if he's done half the stuff that he says that he's done, but he's a great storyteller. And a lot of times, a lot of his stories are about the first time that he's met one of our other friends. If you have a memorable meeting with him, he will never, ever, ever forget you. That he'll be telling that story in every room and bar that he ever walks into because it left an impression on him. And the other part of that equation is consistency. You may not have left the best first impression, but if you are a hard worker, if you consistently show up to work on time, if you do things consistently that allow people to look at you and go, you know what, this person is really reliable. Or he may not be the sharpest guy, but he always gets his work in on time. Well, you know what? That's an impression that goes towards your reputation. So you know what? You'll have moments where you don't look as good. You'll have moments where people start to doubt you a little bit more. Possibly not your most brilliant shining moment, but your reputation will carry you. We'll talk a little bit more about reputation and the idea of building a good brand here on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Clutch with Keon Rose. Next.
Warming up out there through the afternoon with lots of sunshine, highs into the mid-80s. Tonight, fair, lows closer to 60. For the weekend, mostly sunny Saturday, highs in most areas back into the upper 80s. Some clouds, but mainly dry Sunday, highs lower 80s. For lunch or dinner, come to Guthrie's, home of the original golden fried delicious chicken finger with their special sauce. Open daily locations in Trenton, Signal Mountain, and Ringgold. Go get Guthrie's. It's always good. And I'm WDEF News 12's Chief Meteorologist Patrick Hoare.
On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Are you tired of feeling like just another account number to your financial advisor? Try something refreshingly different. Call Edward Jones Financial Advisor Patrick Neal in Hickson at 870-7894. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
We've got a table here at Delia's and Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection, loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's and Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
Here you are, working to keep your customers happy and to manage your cash flow. IRS problems are the last thing you need, but here they are, flapping about you like vultures. Get help from Eric Pelton and his team of accountants at E.J. Pelton Company. Audits, letters, proposed return changes, 1099s, penalty threats. Pelton Tax Resolution Services brings peace of mind and helps you keep more of what you've earned. EJPelton.com. Offices on Brainerd Road and in Saudi Daisy, just north of the Bilo. That's EJ Pelton. Call 622-3156. Think ahead, 622-3156. An alternative to insurance for people of Christian interest is Samaritan Ministries, a cost-sharing group whose fellow members contribute to your medical expenses. Hi, David Tulis here, member of Samaritan Ministries. I have no deductibles, no silly in-network rules. I choose my own doctors. I'm a cash payer and get the cash discount with med providers. I'm 100% compensated by Christian families around the nation who send their checks directly with a personal note and pray for me in my medical distress. I have a family membership. I write a $405 check every month to a person in need. Just love it. Learn more about Samaritan Ministries Tuesday, September 29 at 7 p.m. at Brainerd Hills Presbyterian Church on East Brainerd Road. It's a mini conference on the Christian alternative to medical insurance.
This is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. You're listening to Clutch with Keon Rose. I'm Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me. This is the last segment of the show. It's Friday. I'm tired. I want to go home. I'm sure you want to go home also. Guys, it's close. It's close. You can put your feet up and watch some football this weekend. And I was talking about building a brand earlier. And just making sure that you do the things that you do consistently. That if you do good things in your community, you do good things in your church, make sure that you are consistent with doing those things. Because that reputation can hold you on when, you know, there are times when you won't have the ability to speak for yourself. Then your actions will speak for you even in your absence. You're the Washington Redskins. You're not a good football team. And yet you're still somehow one of the most profitable teams in the league because you've had a reputation. You had a reputation of having good fans. You have a reputation of winning once upon a time. You haven't won anything significant in 20 years. And still you have a reputation of winning to the point where you're worth $2.8 billion. So working on the reputation. I'm working on my reputation. I try to get your name out there, especially if you're young. Get in your field, start doing work. Build up a rep. That's all I'm saying. Here on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, we are sponsored by Ducts Indoor Air Professionals, formerly Duct Busters. Ducts cleans mold, mildew, junk from your long neglected ductwork, everything between your vent and your HVAC system. Call 876-9907. Mark Thompson and his highly trained staff will help you out. That's Ducts Indoor Air Professionals. On AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, you can find us all over the internet. On Facebook and Twitter, if you search Hot News Talk Radio, you will find us as the first thing that comes up in the search bar. Our Twitter handle is @HotNewsRadio. My personal Twitter handle is @SportsCloud. And you can also listen to us on hotnewstalkradio.com and the TuneIn Radio app, which is absolutely free in the Apple Store or the Google Play Store. For those of you with Android devices, simply give us a follow and press play, and you will have Hot News Talk Radio wherever you go. So you don't just have to listen to us in your car. Isn't that great? So part of having a good reputation means surviving things that are legitimately your fault and that are legitimately dangerous. And the one thing that I've noticed that has been surviving every truth, and I know I just told you that you can put your feet up this weekend and watch some football, but I'm about to make you uncomfortable with the idea of watching football. I'm about to make you very, very uncomfortable. The game of football probably has, out of anything in this country, one of the best reputations. It's a fun game to play. It's a fun game to watch. For some people, it's just pure fun. For other people, it's work, it's business. It's a way out of a bad way of life. It's just something to do to keep kids off the streets. It's got a good reputation. Many people credit playing football in high school with a lot of the life lessons that they've learned and that they've carried on to their lives today. Things that they've learned involving teamwork and work ethic. The game of football has a sterling reputation in this here United States of America. As it should. But how long can the game of football continue to survive everything that we're learning about head trauma? Because at some point, it's got to give, right? Someone on Reddit today pointed out, and I thought it was a very good point, that once upon a time, we used to have high school boxing clubs. I can't remember the last time that I went to a high school that had boxing or saw anything of a high school that had boxing. And I've done play-by-play for a bunch of them. I can't remember it. I don't know where those are. People still wrestle because you can wrestle without head trauma. It is impossible to box without head trauma. That is the point of boxing, to inflict various forms of trauma on a person's upper body, but most notably their head, with a variety of punches, hooks and uppercuts and jabs and straights. And, you've got a number of different ways to produce head trauma, if that's what you want to do. And that is why you don't have that in high schools anymore. That people still find ways to box, and people still box from young ages, but you do that on your own time. You go find a boxing gym and you go box over there. And people learned a lot of great life lessons from boxing too. Boxing teaches you about discipline and not giving up. But you still wouldn't want your high schooler doing it, because the trauma of the brain on a developing mind, that's scary stuff to think about. That's scary stuff to think about. And PBS, who has been doing research on the NFL and brain trauma, and there are a lot of football players who, when they die, have basically allowed their body to be donated to research so that people can test and find out more about what happens inside the body of an NFL athlete, especially after they're gone. And what PBS found out from their frontline report is that 87 out of 91 deceased pain disease. 87 out of 91. Well, gosh, that's almost all of them. That's almost all of them. But it goes on. The part that's most interesting about this is that 40% of those tested positive were the offensive and defensive linemen who come into contact with one another every play of the game. According to numbers shared by the Brain Bank to Frontline, the finding supports past research suggesting that it's the repeat, more minor head trauma that occurs regularly in football that may pose the greatest risk to players, as opposed to just the sometimes violent collisions that cause concussions. So the NFL is trying to get brain trauma out of football. You're trying to extend players' careers, extend players' lives, and what you do is you change the rules. You can't hit guys in the helmet with your helmet. Helmet-to-helmet contact is banned. You can't launch yourself like a missile. And it makes things harder on defensive players. Defensive players complain all the time about how it's harder to play defense now than it was. But all of these rules are with regards to protecting the players long-term so that they don't have the same damage mentally and at the age of 60 that's causing them to show Alzheimer's and early onset dementia. That all of those rules are for that. And what this PBS report is saying is that all of those rules might be pointless. They might not serve any particular purpose, because most of the damage that is done from small hits that don't cause concussions, that don't cause notable brain trauma. A running back that gets hit helmet to helmet, if it happens 3 or 4 times in his career, he's probably not worse off than his offensive lineman who is not ever concussed. Maybe that guy never receives a concussion. My favorite offensive lineman in the league, Trent Williams. left tackle, huge dude. Okay, he's more at risk for having serious brain trauma down the road because of all the minor hits that he takes being a lineman. Because they make contact over and over again, obviously. But the wide receiver who's knocked out of a game, has to pass a concussion test, isn't able to pass it, comes back 3 weeks later. The lineman's worse off than that guy, even though we don't see the effects straight up. And can football's reputation hang on despite all of this new information that we continue to receive? This is real. Can the game of football continue to hang on? Because it's not about the NFL. It's not about the NFL at all. We'd love to say that. NFL is the big money maker. Just talked about some teams that make billions. They're worth billions of dollars. Some of the top franchises in the world, the Texans, the Redskins, the Cowboys, the Giants, all of these teams make a couple of $1 billion. That's their net worth. Okay. And it's while the NFL is not going to slow down necessarily anytime soon. This isn't about the NFL. This has effects on college football. Guys in their 20s. Do you think that that's a good idea to have guys in their 20s ramming into each other over and over and over again until one day their brains don't work? How about this? How about high school football? 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds taking these minor shots to the head that are damaging to their brain as their brains are trying to develop. The male brain does not finish developing fully until into the early 20s. You're 22, 23 years old and your brain is still developing. That is why it is so hard to find mature guys on this earth. we are still developing for a very long time. Mentally, women start earlier and finish earlier in their development. With men, and not so much. And while your brain is still trying to develop, should you be taking micro traumas? Most NFL hits occur at the speed of a slow car collision. I was talking about Marcus Mariota yesterday and how fast he is and how he is the fastest in-game quarterback in the history of the NFL, with his top speed in week 1 against the Buccaneers coming in at 22 miles per hour with pads on. And Mariota's not a little guy. 22 miles per hour, this human being ran. That's incredible. But if you have guys capable of generating that level of speed, look, Mariota may be the fastest quarterback, but he's not the fastest guy in the league. Some of these safeties, some of these linebackers are fast dudes too. And when they hit, you literally just add the speeds. Someone's running at Mariota at 10 miles per hour, and Mariota's running at 22. That's a 32 mile per hour car collision that is had between two human beings not in cars. Of course your brain's going to be affected by that. Of course it is. You don't have a choice. Nobody has a choice when it comes to brain trauma. And you can try and legislate brain trauma out of the game all you want to, but all that I keep learning is that these hits continue to add up. And you watch some of the hits that these quarterbacks take, you're not allowed to hit them in the head. In fact, if your hand touches a quarterback's head, that's usually a penalty. But these guys are getting shellacked. They're just getting knocked to the ground, and the old saying, if we fight him, you're going to get hit twice. It's going to be me hitting you, you hitting the ground. That's usually what happens, though. That's usually what happens. I saw the Texans playing the Chiefs last week, and Alex Smith, the quarterback for the Chiefs, was running away from J.J. Watt, and J.J. Watt just caught him and hit him. And he tried to grab Alex Smith, and Alex bounced off of him and then hit the ground head first. You can't get rid of brain trauma from a game this inherently violent. And I don't have a problem with consenting adults playing this game for money. There's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. But when you go all the way down to the high school level, these kids are not fully informed about the trauma and brain damage that could be happening to them further down the road. And that's crazy and a little sad. And it does make me feel a little uncomfortable to watch football. I do still watch it. It's enjoyable. It's fun. I'm not saying you can't enjoy it, but do think about the consequences here. That your brain is moving incredibly violently no matter how hard you're hitting. And that causes scar tissue to develop, and that scar tissue over time has a deleterious effect on the brain. So there's a football thought for you. Enjoy the weekend, everybody. We'll see you back on Monday right here on Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
Warming up out there through the afternoon with lots of sunshine, highs into the mid-80s. Tonight, fair, lows closer to 60. For the weekend, mostly sunny Saturday, highs in most areas back into the upper 80s. Some clouds, but mainly dry Sunday, highs lower 80s. For lunch or dinner, come to Guthrie's, home of the original golden fried delicious chicken finger with their special sauce. Open daily locations in Trenton, Signal Mountain.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
WSDT Sunny Daisy, Chattanooga.
CBS News, I'm Sam Lutzinger. The House has voted to block federal funding for Planned Parenthood for a year in a dispute with President Obama that threatens to lead to another government shutdown. CBS News correspondent Stephen Portnoy.
Planned Parenthood calls the House's action a callous attempt to insert politics into women's health. Democrats in the Senate will surely filibuster the measures. And that's why some conservatives say they'll insist that Speaker John Boehner also include a defunding provision in any bill that avoids a government shutdown on October 1st. It's a key test of Speaker Boehner's leadership, with fights over the debt ceiling, highway spending, and automatic budget